don't need to do, Matt said I don't need to do anything. Okay, great. All right, so for those that are joining, we're gonna go ahead and get officially started. So welcome everybody that has not been listening to everything that we've been doing the last like half an hour. And Adam, we know that his sound and his video works, and now mine does on Zoom. So welcome everybody for joining us. Again, thank you Matthew from Zoom for helping. These webinars have been a great asset. It's been very popular, especially being able to do more of an interactive Q&A, and especially on video. The video portion in these webinars offers something that really hasn't been able to be done yet, or hasn't been done. So people tend to really like it. So thank you for everybody that's joining in. It's still a little bit, we have to get used to it, but for those that don't know, I am the executive director and founder of EDS Wellness, which is a 501c3 nonprofit based in the US. And I'm thrilled. We focus on restoring function and helping people live well. I've done a number of conferences in person where it's called Wellapalooza. I've also done continuing medical education conferences for providers. But since our focus is on living well and restoring function, I'm so thrilled to have Adam from the UK join us, as Adam is the fibro guy who has done amazing work with clients in the UK. So I'm just excited and thrilled to have Adam here. He can tell about his story and how he got started, and his success stories with his clients have been quite amazing. Literally bringing me to tears so many times. It's everything that I ever wanted to know and validate within myself, but also for others. And it's just, I'm thrilled that he's here to share it, tell a little bit about his background, how he works with people. And of course, he's in the UK, I'm here in the US. So there's many of us that would love to know, like, if we don't have somebody to work with like Adam, what do we do? Adam has also done a lot to help support the conferences like Wellapalooza that I've done before, where he's sent videos and different things. So it's been a few years that we've been loosely, no pun intended, working together. And I'm just thrilled to have him here speak. So thank you, Adam.
Anytime.
So go ahead, and you can go ahead and everybody can see your screen and you can get started. And I'll just chat. And also I want to make sure that everybody knows that we will, let's hold questions and Q&A after Adam's done his presentation, unless Adam, you want to interact, however you want to work it is fine. But usually if somebody gives a presentation, we hold the Q&A until after, but I'll monitor the chat, like the typing chat from everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Right. Well, I think this is going to be a case of learn as we go. We didn't really get a chance to try anything. So let's try and share the screen then. So
let's see.
So hopefully that should see you.
Now it looks like there you go. It looks like your video is, you have to unmute your video, Adam. It looks like it's muted again.
Right. Zoom. Here we go. Right.
Before, so.
Right. Can you see the screen or can you see me?
I see you.
Right. So that should be that then.
I don't know. Matthew's still not there, but
right.
Just when we need him. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect.
Right. So you can see that.
Yep.
Right. Smashing. Well, I thought I'd maybe start off showing you something of the kind of people that I work with on a daily basis. So this is a ITV news segment from one of my clients, Chris. She's hypermobile Ehlers-danlos syndrome. So I'll play it. Hopefully the audio should work. We'll give it a go.
It's working. We can't hear the audio on the video, but we can see it.
Can you hear anything at all?
Here, you can hear you, and we can see the video.
All right.
So I'll
give you some background then. Chris was told that the next step would more than likely be a wheelchair, as she'd been on crutches for a couple of years. Not content with that as a future option, she came and found me. And then I think it took us about 8 weeks, and she was ready to pretty much leave. She stayed on for a little bit longer, but these days she works full time. She has her own business on the side, And well, this video is actually about a year old, and in that time, I think we've had one subluxation, which is brilliant when you really think about it in a year. Right.
So she came and found you.
Yeah, she came and found me. This is another one of my clients, Lisa. A lot of the time when people come in, they come in with fibromyalgia, and about 60% of people who come in with just a fibromyalgia diagnosis are actually hypermobile. And the sheer amount of people I've sent back to rheumatology with regards to inquiring about hypermobility diagnosis is absolutely insane. I know we class things like Ehlers-danlos syndrome as rare diseases. However, it's definitely not rare. You can see it pretty much everywhere. I think more so rarely diagnosed than rare disease. So Lisa came in. Her story is quite unusual actually, because she was finishing work one day and she went into her work locker and a kind of hairspray hit her on the head. She developed neck problems and then burning pain that went into her arms and eventually her leg, and then she ended up on sticks and eventually in a wheelchair. As you can see on the right, it's quite different these days. Kate, another one of my hypermobile, she'd had a limp for a good year and a half by the end of her strength training without the subluxations. Right, a couple of press articles in the past. Lauren, she'd had quite a lot of dramas with her hips. She's more than happy to go surfing now without fear of subluxation. And again, these are all kind of things that are doable for people. I know a lot of people, especially in the US, Kendra, you guys don't really have great access to physical therapy or PT because you don't have like a national health service like we do. So kind of today, I just want to kind of debunk some myths that surround a lot of kind of hypermobility in general, and kind of show people that there's actually a lot of things people can do for themselves. Everybody on board?
I think that sounds good. And just so you know, once you're done your screen sharing and you're talking, I don't know if you're going to use the slide, and I'll remind you afterwards that once you're done your slide presentation part and talking, you have to exit out of it so that we can see you, just so you know. But
well, there's a fair few to get through, so.
Yeah, well, good. Go ahead, we're excited.
Right, well, the first thing I like to talk about is, I call it the guru trap. It's something that people get stuck in and they find it very hard to get out. I got stuck in it. And by guru trap, I mean, you rely on everybody else, and we go and see the posture specialist, or we go and see the leading osteopath, and we kind of rely on other people. That's why I'm not a massive fan of things like manual therapy, because it doesn't really teach self-efficiency. It's more of a passive therapy. And we've got tons of research that shows that when a patient or a client is actively involved in their treatment, they have a much better outcome. So when I say the guru trap, especially my guys and girls, when they come in, the first thing I do is just explain that it's not some kind of guru trick. We're not peddling magic in here. It's more about education, because the more education you've got, the more you can actually help yourself. So I think that's important for a lot of people watching, because people will tend to rely on people because they don't have the knowledge kind of available to them. Myths around hypermobility, there is absolutely tons. Probably the one that gets me the most is the weak core myth. And a lot of people watching this will have probably been told by somebody that their back pain originates from a weak core, or it's posture related, or it's because they stretch. And the thing is, it's just not true. We have the evidence. We've got the data that completely debunks it. The core stability myth was debunked nearly 20 years ago, but it's still probably one of the most prevalent kind of myths about, especially when it comes to hypermobility. We know that core stability exercises can help with lower back pain, but it's no more effective than, say, playing badminton or yoga or Pilates or anything else that just promotes healthy movement. There was a good study done a few years ago on 800 pregnant women, all with lower back pain. And what the research wanted to do was they wanted to see what was better, cognitive behavioral therapy or physiotherapy for lower back pain. Within the first week of actually starting the trials, they had to completely cancel it, because 600 of the 800 women made complete unaided spontaneous recoveries. And if you think about if a woman was ever going to have a weak core, it's going to be right after childbirth, when it takes, what, 5 weeks for the relaxing hormone to get out of the system, 6 weeks for the rectus abdominis to shrink back down to normal size. So if there was such thing as a weak core, it's going to be just after childbirth, and you certainly wouldn't have 600 out of 800 women making spontaneous recoveries. Posture is another one. I got sucked down that rabbit hole quite a long time ago, unfortunately, but I know a little bit better now. Posture and pain correlates very, very poorly. And a lot of the times it's more about effect rather than cause. If you're in pain, then you're not going to be walking about tall and confident. You're going to be hunched over. I was ill a couple of weeks ago, and within about 4 hours of being ill, my ribs started to hurt, and it felt like I had costochondritis. It was literally from me being hunched over, more of effect rather than a cause. I did put out a blog not so long ago on stretching with hypermobility, and why we shouldn't be afraid, because, well, Kendra, you're quite a big fan of yoga, aren't you?
I am, and I think that the whole stretching thing is very interesting, especially when you study biomechanics. I am a certified yoga instructor, and yoga is great if done well. When they learn, and I think people get very worried about stretching. I'm sure, I don't know how exactly you feel, but that all stretching doesn't mean far beyond, too much. And I think that's where yoga can be dangerous for people if they don't have proprioception, or if they stretch too much and they don't know that they're doing so. However, if done properly and they learn more awareness, it can be very good. And actually it's taught almost opposite of the way that traditional yoga is taught, in my opinion. But when you study restorative exercise, or the certification that I'm going through, when you talk about biomechanics, there's a lot of emphasis on, understanding true what stretching really is. Not all stretching is bad.
Yeah, well, like I said, most of the myths around stretching come from 20, 30 years ago. We know that stretching doesn't actually change the tissue. We used to think it was called the plastic deformation theory. It's where we thought that when you stretch your hamstrings, you got to the point of discomfort, and if you held it, then the tissue would magically elongate. But a lot of research came about and effectively debunked that theory. So what we use now is what's called the sensory theory. So we know that if you do a hamstring stretch, you'll get to the point where you can't stretch your hamstrings anymore, because it's like you get slight discomfort. And it's actually your brain that creates things like descending inhibition, and it kind of cuts off that discomfort so that you can move a little bit further. The actual tissue remains unchanged. We know it's not an effective warm-up. It doesn't prevent injuries. And I mean, there's tons of myths prevalent everywhere. And the thing is, we've got the evidence to show that they are indeed myths, and they're not actually true. And I think it gets even worse for people with hypermobility, because you guys go and see so many different people and are told so many different things. It takes ages for you to actually receive a proper diagnosis. And although there's no cure, I think prevention would be a great thing if you could get diagnosed early and be set on the right treatment path with the right information. But we don't live in a perfect world, unfortunately. So unless the kind of paradigm shifts, we're kind of stuck where we are at the moment. Things like balance as well. There's a lot of kind of misinformation around that. People seem to be, you see people buying wobble boards and things like that. But the thing is, balance it's a lot like cake. It's the end product. So you need your vestibular system, you need sight, proprioception, neural control. All of these things come together to create balance. Balance is the product of many different systems working together. In the same way, when you bake a cake, it's all about the ingredients. So balancing on a wobble board is going to get you good at balancing on a wobble board, but it's not going to be very transferable to everyday life. Just in the same way as if you miss out on particular ingredients for cake, then the end product isn't going to be what you expect. And if anybody's wondering, that recipe makes an absolutely beautiful cake. If we've got any cake lovers here. I always try and explain things as inputs and outputs, because it's the best way to kind of get across how our brains work. So you see the woman, she's walking through the park and she sees a dog. The dog is information into her brain. We'll call it an input. Any kind of sensory information, any situation, anything she observes is information into her brain. And her subconscious has to process all of this information. So what it does is you'll see on the desk inside of her head, there's a little red book. I call this little red book the Encyclopedia of Life. And in it is pretty much everything you've ever done, every belief, every situation you've ever encountered, every friend, everything is in this book. And it's kind of our reference point to what we do with information. So the woman's walked through the park, she sees the dog, the information comes in, and subconsciously, she has to process this information. So her own beliefs, she might have had a dog when she was 8 years old. So as she flicks through the book, she'll see she had a dog when she was 8. She'll look to see if there's any emotions linked with that. She loved this dog. So there's lots of kind of neurotransmitters and happy chemicals that would make her feel good when she sees dogs. So based on the information available and the context of the situation, she's in the park, there's nobody about, she deems that based on the information coming in and seeing the dog and the context of the situation, the best case in this situation is to make her feel good, elevate her mood. She'll go stroke the dog and she'll walk off, and her belief that dogs are good gets reconfirmed or kind of strengthened even. But you could have somebody completely different walking through the same park and they see the same dog and they get the same information. However, the way they process it is going to be completely different because we are all individual. So you could have somebody who was bit by a dog when they were 8-year-old. So the context of the situation is going to be pretty much the same. However, that one experience in their life is going to change the output because they're going to get outputs of things like anxiety and stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, things like that to protect them from the dog. And once they get past the dog, then it just gets reaffirmed that that is the correct thing they should do when they see a dog. So we've got this kind of conscious and subconscious thing going on all the time. And beliefs are a very powerful thing because they process the information that we have coming in. Is everybody with me so far? Everybody with me? Can you hear me, Kendra?
Sure, yep, I can hear you. I just had my audio while you were talking. Yeah, but I think I'm totally I was actually writing down notes and questions based upon what you were saying.
The thing is, I always try and say, well, we've known since about the 70s that before we even consciously decide to act, about a third of a second before we decide to act, our subconscious mind actually engages. So it kind of begs the question of whether free will is kind of an illusion or if it's an actual thing, if our brains are already priming for an action that we haven't yet decided we're going to do. But in this scenario, obviously with the information getting processed and then a particular output being created, if you've been told numerous times that you have a weak core, or you know what I mean, or you should be careful because you've got horrifically unstable joints and you definitely shouldn't exercise, then that's a core belief that is going to affect how you process information coming in. So you could try and exercise because you honestly believe that you have a weak core and it could damage your back, then you're not going to have a very good time when it comes to doing exercise. Beliefs are powerful things and they kind of provide context to the situation that can either go with us or can go against us. I'm quite a fan of walking because it's not so much an exercise, it's more so a movement pattern. But there's different ways you can walk. When you go hiking, for instance, what happens is your left foot goes forward, that pushes your hips about 4 degrees to the right. Angular momentum will pull your left hand and your thorax to the left. So in essence, your pelvis goes one way and your ribs go another. It's called counter rotation. And what happens sometimes when you're protective of things like your lower back, you do something called mechanical coupling. And this is where you begin to lock your ribs with your pelvis and it stops you from counter rotating, which means it kind of makes things like walking incredibly hard. You'll find people counter rotating when they walk through things like museums. Anybody watching this now, there is a mass difference between going hiking for 4 hours and walking around a museum for 4 hours. 4 hours hiking is I'd be absolutely fine with. 4 hours around a museum, my feet will be absolutely killing. And that's because you can't counter rotate when you're walking around a museum. So at least with hiking, you're using muscle to generate force. And then things like angular momentum, ground reaction force, the environment, your tissue, all helps to pull you into the movement. So in essence, you use your tissue to generate force and you use everything else to create momentum. So it becomes a nice natural walking movement. However, when you walk around things like a museum, all you're doing is repetitively loading tissue, and it gets extremely tiring very, very quickly. If you have a look at this video, this is from the 1960s. Just have a look how people walk. It's completely different now. Everybody seems to have a purpose. Look at people's arms. There's arms swinging. You can see people's thoraxes moving. Everybody's kind of not so much in a hurry, but they have a little bit of purpose when they're walking. There's lots of counter rotating, and nobody's really kind of bimbling. Everybody's generating force and kind of going off momentum. And then if you skip forward to 2016, Oxford Street, it resembles more so kind of like an episode of The Walking Dead.
It's also shoes too. I was going to say also shoes, positive heels shoes, wearing high heels, you know, just adds to everything that you were just.
Oh, absolutely. Look at how restrictive things like handbags are, mobile phones. I don't see in that crowd, I don't see any arms moving. Mm-hmm. And the entire pace as well is a lot slower. We're kind of globally, we've become bimblers. I mean, there's a stark difference between the two. And I've always said for years that walking is an exercise. It's a movement pattern. It's not something to be feared. But if you are walking and you are in essence museum walking, then you're going to be very tired for the rest of the day. I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to walk around a museum all day and then go to the gym. That would probably be the last thing on my mind. And to be honest, I wouldn't want to cook after I've been around a museum. I wouldn't want to do a great deal of things. So we literally have people, before they've even started to think about exercise, we have people almost walking around a museum every day. So they're going to be absolutely tired before they can even think about exercise.
Well, and that also goes to the point of biomechanics and natural movement, that, you know, walking is what humans are made to do. We are biomechanically made to walk in our environment and not in the museum walking, as you were saying, Adam. It's such a good point that it's not even just being in a museum walking and how that's done, but it's also the type of shoes that we're wearing and how that changes our biomechanics and how it affects how we stack our joints and how that makes us feel. It's so pertinent to everything that you were saying, that, you know, walking is what humans are made to do. We're made to walk on 2 feet and walk. And we've become so accustomed to that almost being taken away from us, or even not even considering how our walking patterns relative to our environment that we're in and how we walk and the shoes we wear and different things affect that, and affect even how we feel and how it allows us to stack our joints, if you will, and how that might affect the presentation and symptoms of our condition. So I think that's so pertinent.
And then factor in things like flat feet, and it's going to affect the entire kinetic chain. Like I said, we've evolved through millions of years to be able to walk. It's a natural movement. If anybody's ever wondered why toddlers kind of look very strange when they walk, it's because their femurs are straight. When we're born, our thigh bones, our femurs, are perfectly straight. And what happens is the actual act of walking for the next 3-4 years creates something called a bicondylar angle. And that's where our femurs start to angle inwards. And this helps aid us in that counter rotation that we were talking earlier. But it does come at a slight price, because the angle at which now the quadriceps contract means that it's quite easy to dislocate knees. However, to get around this, we've actually got a nice lip of cartilage that stops doing this. So if you really think about it, we're actually born with the solution to a problem that we won't have for another 4 years. Because if you look at gorillas and chimpanzees, anatomically, they're very, very close to us. Their hips are slightly different, which means their glute medius don't contract in the same way as ours. But gorillas and chimpanzees are all born with straight femurs, and they all die with straight femurs. And they're missing that little lip of cartilage I was just talking about. But if you look at a human who's paraplegic, or somebody who's never walked a day in their life, they're born with straight femurs, they will die with straight femurs, but they still have that lip of cartilage. It's almost pre-programmed in to be the solution to the problem that we haven't got yet. So if you kind of think about that, it's a little bit crazy when you think about kind of our DNA and how we're here and that blueprint that makes us. Where to start? Obviously, exercise movement's quite scary for a lot of people. Some people might do it, some people might be too scared to. The thing is, we are meant to move. It's things like our lymphatic system don't have a pump. It relies on us moving or being exposed to cold to actually pump. But my advice is stop exercising, because most people have very bad associations with the word exercise, and it's more of a social construct. It doesn't really exist. Our ancestors didn't do it. We're not supposed to be putting time aside. We're just supposed to move. We're supposed to get food.
Move all day long. You speak the language that Katie Bowman does about exercise, which is very hard for me to grasp as somebody in public health and who's always worked out. But I understand we were made to move all day long, and the idea of exercise is a, kind of a band-aid to a problem that we've created because we have this sedentary, more, ease of use type of environment. Everything that we do, even getting our food and different things, is all so much easier now because we have all these things that make it easier, but that has also affected how much we move all day long. All these conveniences have stopped us from moving in the way that, like you said, our ancestors have, and how that affects us is pretty crazy when you actually really think about it. But that's what Katie Bowman talks about that quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I used to be very biomechanically minded. And the thing is, it's great, but sometimes we forget a lot about the kind of psychosocial factors to everything, because ultimately we are biopsychosocial beings. We have lots of physical things that influence us, and lots of kind of psychological things, and a lot of even social things that influence us. And like I said, things like posture, I used to get kind of sucked down that rabbit hole quite a long time ago. And the best thing I ever did was break free. So as much as I am a fan of things like movement and kind of biomechanics, I think the kind of psychosocial aspects far outweigh it, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But as far as exercise and the kind of the association, like Kendra said, I definitely would drop the exercise part to it, because it's, for most people, it doesn't help. It just kind of adds to the fear of actually moving. I'm quite a fan of Kendra's just move for 5 minutes that she does. That's fantastic. It gets people moving, and it kind of gets rid of the fear of exercising. So where to start, really, if you've never, or you're not used to at least moving, you'll more than likely probably have done some kind of exercises like this, the clam or the bridges. I have the same with my guys and girls. We want to train smarter, not harder. Our brains are set up to avoid doing anything hard. That's literally what has kept us alive for millions of years. So we want to be smarter about our training. We don't necessarily want to be working harder. And as a whole, I absolutely hate clams and I hate bridges, because I'm more into things like transferable exercises or transferable movements. The clam makes a lot of sense in theory. Remember, when we walk, 60% of walking is done on one leg. So whilst one leg's striking the floor, the glute med on that side contracts and it pulls the opposing hip upwards. That gives your leg clearance to swing through. However, when you do that, it's more of a closed chain exercise because your foot's connected to the floor. So when that glute med contracts, it lifts the other side of your hip up. When you lie on the floor, however, you use that muscle in a totally different way. You use it to abduct your leg. Now, that's, like I say, it's kind of like wanting to get really good at the guitar, but only ever practicing on the piano. Like I say, if 60% of walking is done on one leg, the way we should be training is to complement that. So lying on our side, doing things like clams, and don't get me wrong, there is no such thing as an inherently bad exercise. If you want to fire up those glute meds and get a good burn and kind of get connected to that tissue, then a clam is going to be a brilliant exercise. But like I was saying earlier, we want to be training a little bit smarter. We don't want to be kind of wasting our time with things that's not going to have much of an impact, or kind of, you won't get as much bang for your buck, so to speak. The same goes with bridges. Oh, sorry, going back to the clams there. We also kind of miss a few things off with the clams. When we're walking, we've got neural control going on. We've got proprioception. We're fighting against gravity. We've got all of these subsystems running in the background. And as soon as we lie down on the floor, we take them all away. So it's kind of like we're not getting as much bang for our buck. Same with bridges. 60% of the time we spend walking is on one leg, which means we use one glute with the contralateral latissimus dorsi when we do that counter rotation. Exercises like bridges are going to be good because they're going to help you contract your bum, your glute max. However, most people with hypermobility haven't got the greatest proprioception in the world, which means they're either going to have a very hard time actually contracting the tissue, or they're going to use muscles that are a little bit more dominant, like lower back extensors, and people are going to get 5 or 6 reps in, and then the lower back's going to fill with blood and it's going to cramp. Again, as well as the exercise, it uses both bum cheeks at the same time, which means that as you contract with them, you're just getting good at doing bilateral hip extension, and it'll get you better at getting up and down or doing bilateral hip extension, but it's not going to translate very well to actually walking, which is a shame if we're spending time actually doing the exercise. So with my guys, I always say most of our training really wants to be revolving around unilateral training because it resembles more of how we actually move. So you see here, Casey's demonstrating it. She's simply leaning over something. She's got one leg supporting her weight, and she's taking her right leg back and she's bringing it in. Brilliant exercise. It's super easy to do. You don't need any kit. Most people can just lean over their armchair or the sofa or kitchen bench or something around waist height. And although she's moving the right leg, it's not actually the right leg we're actually working. We're working the left leg because that left glute medius is having to contract to hold her right hip. She's getting some leg extension in. She's using the glutes on the right-hand side, but the majority of the actual exercise and the benefits of it is going to be at her being able to contract and keep the opposing hip up. So the more she does that, the better she gets at walking because she's training kind of how we're supposed to be moving. Other exercises are like, and again, it's completely inexpensive. You can pick a frisbee up from Amazon for about 50 pence. You can find them in charity shops. Here in the UK, where we've had our 4 days of summer for the year, you'll find frisbees in storage in people's lofts and things like that. They're relatively inexpensive. And like I said, I'm going to go back to when we're walking. You're using one glute max at a time. So in positions like the frisbee slides that you can see Casey doing, with her knee just forward of her ankle, she's in a really good position where she can drive her heel into the floor, she can squeeze her left bum, and she can do unilateral hip extension. And the more she does that, the better she's going to get actually moving, and the more kind of confident she's going to feel. She's going to feel like she's got more stability, which is going to transfer to everyday movement. Like I say, it's a super easy exercise to do, and pretty much anybody can do it. It's getting you used to using one side. However, you've still got the safety of the other foot on the floor. So it is kind of a bilateral exercise in a sense, because you're still using both feet, but the majority of it's coming from the left-hand side. You can progress it on, you can get rid of the frisbee, and you can make sure that your right foot isn't on the floor at all, and you can make it into a truly unilateral exercise, something that really burns, and you're going to feel straight away.
Adam,
yeah.
Somebody just asked, and I think it's pertinent while describing this, because I love this, especially because we sit so much and we are in hip, flexion for so long that the hip extension is important for our bodies to learn how to move or start moving more, like you were saying, even just in walking, and to do it better. But somebody asked, Marina asked, what is the difference between the frisbee exercise and lunging? And I thought that's a very pertinent, thought to point out and answer.
With lunging, you're hitting the hamstrings a lot more on both legs. With the frisbee slides, because 90% of your weight is in the dominant leg, you pretty much get no effect on the leg that's on the frisbee. It's all one-sided, so it's all kind of hip stability. Whereas a lunge, you're kind of overloading the quadriceps, and you're hitting the glutes, and you're hitting the calves, and you're hitting the hamstrings, and sometimes it can be a little bit too much for people who are just getting into things.
Right, and so when you're talking about training smarter and not harder, that's a better way to train smarter, because what you're doing is you're working the muscles that are important and effective for learning how to walk well.
You're effectively, you're contracting one side of your bum, and you're fighting against gravity, and you're using proprioception, and you're moving your hips before your ribs go up, and like I say, it all adds to that balance.
Mm-hmm. And helps us walk better and all day long and move better.
It also takes away the fear. A lot of people with hypermobility always report kind of burning pain around the hips, and most of that comes from, the thing is, our brains are really clever, and there's always method to the madness. So when you end up with things like that, it's your body trying to spasm the joint back together. It's almost your brain trying to help. Like at the end of the day, the subconscious version of you that resides in your head really doesn't care if you have to go to work, or if you have a wedding or a previous engagement, or you're supposed to be out with your friends. They literally have one job, and that is to keep you safe. So if spasm in that tissue is enough to try and pull the joint together, yes, it might hurt. However, it's better in the long run for you. So that's what takes precedence.
Yeah, I deal with that hip burning all the time. And I think that was one of the biggest, changes in my thinking as far as how I train or work out.
But the thing is, the first thing people do is they fight it, and they either take things like diazepam or amitriptyline for some muscle relaxant properties, or they start pinning it, or they start stretching it out. And we want to be doing the opposite. We want to be contracting the tissue. We want to be working with the brain as opposed to trying to, I mean, if you stretch it out, it is going to stop the spasm. However, it's not actually addressing anything. It's just kind of masking it.
Well, and it was frustrating for me, and just other people I'm sure go through this, is that I was working out, and then I was having more of this pain. And what I realized that it was really because I was moving less all day long. So my body had become weaker in that type of movement, even though I was working out. And it's what makes me feel better is exactly contracting the muscle. But it was very humbling for me, as somebody works out, but just to really face the fact that what had happened deconditioning wise, I don't even know if we like to talk about that, but just for lack of a better word, from just not moving as much and being more sedentary at the computer because of what I do, and how that was affecting me. I mean, it was amazing and humbling, and I've said it and talked about it many times, but to your point, I mean, I totally understand.
Cool. Right, and I always say to people as well, understand you're adaptable. Whether it's playing guitar, like I said, when I first started learning guitar to do my best man speech at my best friend's wedding, and I ultimately regretted making that decision because within the first month, I totally underestimated how hard learning the guitar is. However, the more I played, the harder the calluses on my fingers grew, the better the neural pathways got ingrained. And before I knew it, I could do all kinds of bar chords and different other chords, and I could sing at the same time, and I could do different strumming patterns. But it's all through practice. Kind of repetition is king. It's the same when you go driving. The more you drive, the better you get. The thing is, we have this certain kind of bioplasticity to us because we're humans, and it means that whatever we do, we get really good at, and that can kind of work for us in kind of the terms of you learning to drive or learning a new task with playing the guitar. But it can also kind of work against us in a way because it also includes pain. The more you make pain and the more you produce it, ultimately the better you get at producing it. And like I said, beliefs are strong things, and when we experience pain constantly, it becomes much easier to actually produce it. Again, we're efficient, we're adaptable, we adapt to things. Same goes for things like POTS. If your brain thinks it's not going to get enough oxygen, it has absolutely no qualms about rendering you unconscious so that your head and your heart are level on the floor and you get the adequate blood supply to your head. At the end of the day, the brain is there to keep us alive. If it needs to create pain to do that, to protect you, or it needs to create dizziness or things like that, then that's ultimately what it's going to do. I'm just going to come out of this now so that I can actually, so you guys can see me. Right, might need your help here, Kendra. Right, can you guys see me okay? Oh, Kendra, you seem to be muted.
Sorry, I was telling my son to bring me water. All right, so we have a lot of comments and people question. Of course, I have a lot of comments and questions, but everybody is making comments and really agreeing. And I think this, it's a different way of thinking. And I know it's been and while a lot of what you said is what I've always talked about and share with my Just 5 Minutes, and what I've also learned and witnessed within myself, it's so great to have somebody else that works within the community to kind of also come along this journey. but the approach is different. And even for me to kind of change my thinking from working out to more functional movement, and in a way that moves more, it's been a gradual process even in myself, because I have to then, here I'm talking about it all day long, but yet to even see what was happening to my physical being when I was still working out was pretty humbling. And just to change my own thinking and how do I do that with what I do has been very interesting and challenging too. So, and I think it almost, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but it's almost, it's just a different way of thinking about movement and what we need to do. And it's not that we can't exercise or we can't do PT, but that's just two things that are a component of movement. So I think that goes with what you were saying. So I'm gonna let you keep continuing. I'm gonna make sure I answer the questions or ask them when appropriate from other people.
Oh, it's awesome. Something else that I'm really passionate about, and it kind of feeds into that whole guru complex thing I was talking about earlier, is that a lot of the things we think happens when we go for things like massages or we self-treat is actually not doing kind of the mechanism isn't what we think it is. Years ago, I was adamant that I was releasing soft tissue, or I was releasing fascia, or all of this kind of different modality stuff. However, when we actually look at the research, we find that it's simply not true. Things like the IT band, non-contractile tissue, has the tensile loading capacity of about 1,300 pounds, which means that if you want to stretch your IT band, you're going to have better luck stretching Jeffrey, who you can see in the corner, who is the massive tire. It's just not going to happen. In the same way I said about myths about kind of core stability and stuff like that, if you really just be objective and look at the research, it opens up a whole different world. And we kind of find that every decade kind of has its fads. If you look at the late 90s, we had the core stability craze. And what happened was, at the end of the 90s, there was one study where we found that when you do this with an arm or a leg, your TVA contracts about 20 milliseconds faster than you actually lifting your arm, which is a reflex, and we have no conscious control over that. However, we found in this research study that people with lower back pain, it activated slightly slower, still quicker than that, and no weaker, just slightly slower. And it was this one study, along with a few others that kind of mimicked it, that created this boom in core stability where, and this is the kicker, people can kind of become experts or gurus or monetize something, and then you can come in and you can spend X amount of money every week, but you've got to keep going, because if you don't, your core will get mega weak. I was actually at a manual therapist convention years ago, and it was kind of like a big Tony Robbins type thing. And this guy come on the stage and he put his arms out and he went, "Give a man a fish." And everybody just looked really confused. And then some lady in the back shouted, "Feed him for a deer?" And he went, "Yes." And then he leaned in a little bit closer and he went, "Teach a man to fish." And all of us, including me, went, "Feed him for the rest of his life." And he went, "No. You teach him to fish, you've wasted a perfectly good business opportunity for repeat custom." And I think that's very prevalent in today. There's lots of gurus telling you, "Oh, I've got a magic movement and it can be yours for only 5 easy installments of £200.
Or just my plan. My plan is the best plan for everybody with, X, whatever. I totally agree.
Exactly. So there is no special exercise. There's no magic way to move. Have you ever seen humans? We come in all different shapes and sizes. Our kind of center of mass can differ greatly depending on height or things like sex. We're a crazy kind of species. We come in all different shapes and sizes. There's no one way to move. If you look at things like bodybuilders, all of the world's best bodybuilders are really short guys. And it's because of that kind of short joint space. The muscle bellies look fuller, so when they're on stage, they look much bigger. The thing is, everybody's good at something. And the thing is, there's certain movements that you'll be really good at that your tall friend might not be, because they have different levers. And it's kind of, like I said, there is no perfect exercise. You find something, and if you find something, do it if you enjoy it. The thing is, if you do something that you enjoy, it feels good. And if it feels good, it releases endorphins, and endorphins help you with pain. It releases the little chemist in your head, and you get something very powerful which kills pain. I said, there's no special movement. Going back to kind of every decade has its fans. For some reason, it seems to be fascia this decade. And everybody's blasting it or they're releasing it. And the thing is, you can't. It's pretty much dead. It's like hair. I say, and I imagine in the next 10 years, it'll be, you know, pinky toe training, and everybody's going to have a buff pinky toe. It'll be something ludicrous that you can spend tons of money on and get nothing out of it. With my guys, I like to breed self-sufficiency. I want people coming in and I want them moving, and it's not about the exercise. Any exercise is just an input. It's just information into your brain. How you process that information depends on your beliefs, the context of the situation, emotions, what you understand, what you're being told. So when people come in, I like to have a little bit of an education session and say, right, look, this is how pain works. And explaining pain isn't something you do to somebody, it's something you do with somebody so they have a better understanding. Because everybody watching this video now, you'll pretty much be able to read and write. And that's because you know the alphabet. But if you didn't know the alphabet and you only use, say, 6 or 7 words, there's no way you'd be able to read and write as well. The thing is, if you've got gaps in your knowledge, then you're going to struggle with certain things. So, like I say, when people come in, it's about breeding self-sufficiency. I don't want to see my guys for more than 8 weeks because, truth be told, they don't need it. I want people coming in, being educated, so that they can leave and they can be self-sufficient, manage it themselves. I once, when I was in chronic pain, and it was about the time loans and Wonga loans and all the kind of payday loans were first coming out, I once spent £1,000 on a pain management course and did nothing more than talk to somebody for 20 minutes and colour in. And I'm not even joking. I actually probably left in more pain than when I actually started, because I was angry, and emotion is a big driver of pain. I don't know, anybody got any questions so far?
There's definitely some questions, and I'll field them to you. And to your point about seeing people and being self-sufficient is so key, because, you know, from my background in public health and everything in wellness, that's the plan. The plan, when I put programs together, whatever, is for people to learn how to be self-empowered to help themselves when there's nobody else to help them. If they don't have a doctor, if they don't have a PT, if they don't, when you have absolutely nothing so-called to be able to help you, even money, you need to be able, we have to start somewhere. I just said this to somebody, and my goal and my belief in the way that I work with people, or try to help people similar to you, and the fact that I want to help people find a way to be empowered on their own. And that recipe that works for one person is different than the other. And we're not always going to have our tools or our resources or our doctors or whatever to help us. And I have, you know, built my life in a way that I make sure that I have what I need. Even if I have nothing, I can still take care of myself. And at the end of the day, that's what I hope for the people that I work with. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So to that statement, I think, is so critical. So somebody asked, do your clients have structural joint damage like OA? I believe she means osteoarthritis. If that's not, Rena, please let me. And she said, how do you deal with it? So if they do have something like structural joint damage, how do you deal with that?
I've had people over the years who are hypermobile, but not so much because of connective tissue disorders. It's been because of shallow joints. Again, you just got to work around it, improvise, adapt, overcome. I've had and still do have a few with things like scoliosis, but at the end of the day, unless it's dramatic 40, 50 degrees scoliosis, it doesn't matter. Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, I think currently, he has scoliosis. You've got Olympic gold medalist swimmers who have scoliosis. It ultimately doesn't matter. Structure isn't the be all and kind of end all of everything, because everybody's unique. But I hope that answers the question.
I think we're so used to feeling and seeing ourselves as broken that if we have a condition or a label, or maybe 20 of them, like many of us do, that means that we have to fit within some tight box that, you know, of certain labels and black and white things. And also the idea that the body can't not heal perfectly, but you know, learn a way to move more effectively, or do something that maybe you like that you were told that you couldn't. And I totally agree with you with this whole black and white, you know, right way to move or not. There's not one thing that's really black and white, and everybody's really different. And there's so many factors, even if we have all 20 conditions, that getting over our beliefs of what we feel, or fears, if you will, of how we can do things or been told we're not supposed to do is really critical. And it doesn't mean we can do it in the way that we used to do it, or that we should do it the way that other people can do it, but adapting it and getting over that position to learn how to help ourselves even on our own is so critical.
Well, that's the problem people have. People go in and it's patient 5011, hypermobile EDS that's being treated, instead of John who's plastered all his life and has had recurrent back pain. People are so quick to kind of just, right, well, you have EDS or you're on the hypermobility spectrum or you have any other myriad of disease, so we're just going to focus on that. The thing is, people are people, people are individual, and the thing is, there's so many different factors that influence everything that if you don't look at it, then you're never going to be able to help anybody. And I think as much as there's kind of a therapeutic alliance when you see professionals, I think sometimes that line is too strong. With my clients, I'm friends with all of them, because working with somebody who's in pain or who's had 20 dislocations in the last month, it's a personal thing. When I moved into the new studio, the very first piece of mail that I got was actually a wedding invitation from a girl with hypermobility, EDS, who came up and she says, if you get me out the wheelchair and we get cracking and I can walk down that aisle, you can come and dance at my wedding. And fair play, my invite come, and it's in August, so I'm going to put my suit on and have a little boogie. But it's, like I say, it's about working with people. You're not working with EDS. I mean, you are to a certain extent, but it's much more about the person. You've got
and
them.
we are people outside of these conditions, and
Yeah. Sometimes labels can be damaging. I mean, they can be very validating, and it makes you feel like you're not going crazy, which is great. And it can also sometimes put you on the right treatment path. But a lot of the times it just comes with kind of more nocebo and more red flags, and sometimes it can kind of consume people, which is understandable because that's what they do.
Yeah.
A lot of the time as well, when people come in, where their body will break is way further than where they actually realize. And I don't know why that is. People come in, and I get it a lot with my 80-year-old clients. They come in and these old girls, they say the same thing. They say, oh, I've wasted away, I can't get up. So the first thing I ask them to do is I ask them to get on the floor. So I give them a hand, and then I'll say, right, okay, can you stand up? And they say the same thing. Oh, I've wasted away. And I go, well, you probably got some acne, but it's nowhere near as bad as you think. But the thing is, it's not about their strength or their muscle. They physically have the amount of tissue it takes to get off the chair. It's just more of an input-output thing. They're on the floor, they go to stand up, they have information come in, and their brain goes, right, we're getting up off the floor. What do we know about the floor? Well, we know 1 in 3 admissions to A&E for the elderly in the UK is because of a fall. Ethel next door fell, and now she's got a hip replacement. I haven't been on the floor in about 20 years. Oh, right. Based on the information coming in and what we know to be true and what we believe, best course of action, don't engage those tissues. So they can't get up. And it's nothing to do with tissues. I literally spend, it seems like magic, but it's not. I spend about 30, 40 minutes of the first session on the floor with somebody, and they make nice subconscious associations of the floor from when they played with their grandkids, or when they were kids, or when the kids were kids. These are 8-year-old women who haven't been on the floor in nearly 30 years because it's a dangerous place. And once they spend a little time on the floor, we might play a game, we might watch a YouTube video, we might have a chat, it doesn't really matter. And then I'll say, all right, well, tell you what, let's load our joints. I'll show you a really easy way we can use a little bit less muscle power, but have our joints in an advantageous way so that it's a bit easier. Even though I'm completely lying. I'm not going to do that at all. I'm just going to make you stand up. But it's the words I use. And when somebody loads the joints and they stand up and they go, oh, straight up. And you go, oh, wow, I had it all along. That's, you know, that's what it's about. That's why I have Jeffrey. You see Jeffrey in the corner?
The tire.
Yeah, who could be scared of a Jeffrey?
I love the tire. You know, I don't have a desk, or, well, I'm sitting in a chair, but we've also started eating on the floor. I posted that the other day because I don't want, I'm like, you use more joints to get down to the floor and get back up, and before you stop using it, you realize you can't, you know, and then there's beliefs set in, and that's important for me, for my own children, but even for my husband, but he's not on this webinar right now. And but it's so true, and I love that approach for sure. And I love Jeffrey.
That's why he's there. Jeffrey weighs 120 kilos, right? So he's fairly heavy. And the thing is, I make everybody flip him. And I'll tell you a secret. You will probably never in your entire life need your joints in the position you have them when you flip Jeffrey, and you will never, ever, probably never, need to exert the amount of force with your joints in those positions ever again. It is not transferable. You will never need to do that. However, it's not about that. It's about when people flip it, they feel like a badass because it's 120 kilos. So what happens is the next time they're in Tesco's or they're shopping and they go to bend over to pick the shopping bag up, where normally it would be information in, what's going on? I'm in Tesco's, any danger? No. Ooh, we got that slip disc though, the ones that don't exist. Right, let's spasm the back tissue so that we can't pick it up. They get, no, wait, didn't we slip like a 20 kilo tire? And the brain just goes, all right, let's pick the bag up. And people pick the bag up, they see they can do it, and the next time they do it, they have no problems.
Yeah, I think that's, I can't agree even more than I already do, but it's so true. And it's a change in the way that we think about movement or our labels or different things like that too. And that can be hard because for so long people have fought to have a diagnosis to prove that what they feel is real. And I think sometimes there's a real fear sometimes of what happens if I not do get better. That's not the way I want to say it, but what happens, would that be taken away? Or will that mean that what I felt wasn't real? I mean, it's hard, it's a challenge, you know, and not saying that's for everybody's case, but I think that really that mind-body connection just in general, to really be self-aware, to really understand and face our own beliefs and fears is so key. But to realize that our bodies are very strong, and like we were talking about before about being dependent upon the bureaus, sometimes also is that we never talk about how the body can get better or heal. Maybe not take away a mutation, but I'm just saying, like, our bodies are amazing. What happens when the mind-body connection is in control, we are more self-aware, whether it's meditation or whatever it is, it's amazing what we can do to really improve our situation and our presentation of symptoms and everything. And it's quite humbling, I think.
It's like when you think about it, muscle is just tissue. Without a brain, it can do nothing. And there's a really cool thing you can use to kind of hit home with this. If you get a partner and you put your arm out like that, and you get somebody to put their hand on your hand and count to 10 in the head, and at any point during 10 seconds, they're going to push your hand down and you have to resist them. Then what happens is you see their hand, you see the threat, your brain goes, okay, there's going to be about this much force probably. All right, brain, let's recruit X amount of muscle fibers. So they're pushed down and you fight them off. However, if you get them to do it again immediately after, but you close your eyes and you cut off a pretty kind of prevalent site, then what happens is your arm goes straight down and you become instantly weaker. And it's only because you cut off your vision. It's nothing to do with you atrophying or you getting worse. It gets even better if you do that again and put a pen in your mouth. Bite down on the pen and have somebody push on your hand. You become instantly weaker because given a choice between the arm or the jaw, your brain is going to pick the jaw every time. If you break your arm, you'll be fine. 50,000 years ago, if you broke your jaw and you didn't have medical science, you'd die because you couldn't eat. So we still kind of have this kind of hierarchy of what's more important. And the closer you get to the head, the more important it becomes. Like I said, it's the same with kind of hypermobility in a way, because everybody gets really obsessed about joints and muscles and they totally forget about the brain. Because the thing is, if you have lax collagen, all right, and keep in mind that a large percentage of skin is collagen and a lot of proprioception comes from skin. If you're walking along the virtual map that you have in your brain, if your brain doesn't know where your joints are, if it thinks you're in the air when you're walking, but you're not, you're actually striking the floor, then the tissue isn't going to contract, and it's not going to stabilize you. Because the thing is, it doesn't really matter in a massive sense if the ligaments are lax, because ligaments are a secondary braking system. It's the muscles that are supposed to be the kind of primary. So if you use things like tape or compression wear, it acts as a little tactile cue and says, hey brain, I'm here, joint here. That's why taping is so effective. It doesn't stabilize the joints, it's tape. What it does is it gives you a nice tactile input to your brain, so that your brain actually knows where your joints are. Same as if you were to look in the mirror and things like that.
Yeah.
But people kind of forget about the kind of the importance of actually knowing where your joints are.
Yeah, so true. I mean, and the whole bracing thing and different things are important, because people need them, and to a certain extent, especially if they really can't function, but to understand what they can do. And I'm not talking taping, but that's why taping can be super effective and helpful, because it gives you that input, but it doesn't, make up or teach your body to not use certain muscles. And I know a lot of braces are trying to get more natural, if you will, so it doesn't have this power over teach our bodies to be dependent upon it versus using the brace. But that's a very hot topic too. But I've noticed a lot of presentations at conferences, and even my own, have talked a lot about this bracing idea, and more in favor of the tape and different things, which has been great because it's been a progression for sure. Let me ask questions. Okay, could we work on strengthening the muscles without removing the trigger spots first? She says, I noticed that I barely get any muscle hypertrophy without muscle myofascial release. However, trigger spots return easily too. So somebody, I believe if I'm asking it correctly, said, can we actually strengthen, and I would say maybe build our muscle or make them stronger if we don't remove the trigger points?
Well, that is an entirely separate webinar. To talk about trigger points, there's actually more evidence to suggest unicorns are real, believe it or not, unfortunately. And I'm infamous for going against the grain and saying things.
I love that you go against the grain. I have to tell you, I was such a fan.
Yeah, but things, even myofascial release, if it was called maybe neuromodulation, then yeah, we could get behind that. But simple terms, we cannot release fascia. It's impossible. When you go from massage, the massage therapist doesn't do anything to your tissues. A massage is simply somebody touching your brain through your nervous system. That doesn't mean it's bad. I still have massages because I've got half an hour lying in a dark room. I'm a human being. I'm a social creature. I crave touch. So I've got somebody touching me. I'm relaxed. I'm releasing endorphins. I'm happy. And my phone isn't ringing. Nobody's shouting dad. Nobody wants me. So massage is good because it does things. But again, it's like I was saying before earlier, a lot of the mechanisms behind how we think things work aren't really true. And the thing is, if you're objective about it and you actually hunt down the research, because the research is widely available, but it's kind of, there's so many different conflicting things, and different researchers have different bias and things like that. For me, it makes no difference. For me, whether I'm releasing trigger points or it's more to do with the brain, it makes no difference to me. So for me, I can't be biased about it. But I know it never goes down well when I hammer out the trigger point conversation. But I'd seriously suggest, have a look at some of the research, have a look at some of our current pain science and stuff like that. And always keep in mind that for nearly 200 years, we thought scurvy was caused by the sea air, right? 200 years. And then once we figured out it was actually vitamin C, what we did was, in the UK, we immediately got rid of all of the oranges off the ships and replaced them with limes because they were cheaper. So kind of always keep your wits about you when it comes to things like science and kind of critical thinking.
Well, it's true. As also what you just said, and I think what I've said, and I think that, what people have noticed works for them is important, because just because, we're having this conversation or we're talking about something different, whatever works for you and you've noticed in your own body is important. But I think also goes back to the point of self-efficacy. If I don't have a way to release my trigger points, I still got to make sure my muscles work and I can function and take care of 3 kids and 2 puppies and a husband and work 3 jobs. I mean, I don't know that I have the time or the bandwidth or the money or the people to help me release all of my trigger points. If that was, I still function. And so I think it's important, while I really like releasing trigger points and I think it's very effective. And I think it's, especially if that's what people have known, that makes an impact on how they can grow muscle or not grow muscle, but strengthen, and that they don't have as much control. If they don't do it that way, that's wonderful. And I think that as long as you figure that out and you have the resources, that's great. But for me personally, I know other people, I want to make sure that they understand how to help themselves and not have a barrier that they have to do something before they can try to just learn how to move and function well, especially if they have nobody to help them, or don't know how to help themselves from a trigger point standpoint. Now, I do, I agree with you. The trigger points are hard. They can cause pain, and they can, impede us. I also notice that I don't build as much muscle, I'm not as strong, but I still have to keep moving, and I still have to keep doing the things on a daily basis to help myself function well. And I can't always go to have trigger point release or dry needling or massage or manual therapy. I can't always do that. I don't have the time, I can't afford it. So I have to focus on what I can do to help myself to make sure that I'm still functioning as optimally as possible.
Well, like you say, it's being hypermobile is expensive. Being in pain is expensive, and there's so much stuff out there that you can completely waste your money on. Like I say, I get tight and I get uncomfortable if I have to do a long car journey and things like that. I'll get stiffness because when I'm driving, rather than create pain, because it'll incapacitate me, possibly kill me, the body produces stiffness. But the thing is that there is no difference between the tissue and the tissue when I feel stiff and the tissue when I don't feel stiff. It's unfortunately a subjective feeling, but it's a very powerful feeling. And the thing is, when we do things like trigger point release and things like that, or you try and do your myofascial release, it's not working on the tissues in the way that we think. It's more of a brain thing. It just utilizes things like descending inhibition of the brain, and it helps you to combat and turn down that pain.
Right. The neural connection is so huge. And it's not that we make things up, it's just a way that our bodies and our minds connected in response to different stimuli, like you said, input, output, pain, different things. So if somebody feels that they need that the trigger points come back, or they feel that discomfort, like we were just talking about, how can somebody help themselves?
Well, you can do what you've always done. The thing is, if you're on your trigger points with the trigger point ball, the thing is you're giving input to your nervous system, and the thing is it's going to be uncomfortable. And the more you relax and the more you breathe through it, the more your brain's going to associate, oh, there's actually no danger here, so I'm going to turn this signal down, and you get relief. If that's how you get relief, get relief. Thing is, everything we do to our bodies is just information in. It is how it is processed ultimately. Like I'm not religious, but if somebody ever came in and said, well, I pray every night, and it gives me pain relief, I would be like, well, you keep praying because that's what's working for you. If somebody come in and they swear that having noodles on a Wednesday or something gives pain relief, then thing is, it is. Because the thing is, we run away with things like the placebo effect. And the thing is, because of entropy and how time works in physics, you cannot physically have an effect without a cause, only if time ran backwards, which it doesn't. So that begs the question of, well, what's a placebo? Well, we know if we give somebody a sugar pill and they think it's a paracetamol, they'll get pain relief in the same way as if we just give them a paracetamol. We also know that if we give them a capsule instead of a sugar pill, but it's still sugar, they'll get even more pain relief. We know that if you give somebody a placebo injection, they get about 5 times more benefit from that placebo injection than the pill. And in some studies, it even shows that the more attractive the doctor giving the injection, the more pain relief you get. So it's more about how things are processed in the brain rather than actually what's being done. And that kind of takes me back to the whole movement thing. There is no one single way to move. It's just movement. It's just an input to your brain. It's how we process it. So I could have 2 people in the studio and I could give them the same exercise, but if I just word it slightly different to both of those people, they'll get totally different outputs and they'll get different things from the exercise. Like I said, years ago used to be very kind of biomechanical, and if your knee hurt, it had to be a VMO that was turned off or underactive. And we know muscles don't turn off because they're still active when you're under general anesthetic. Like I said, I'm very big on education for everybody, and I always say, if you don't believe anything I say, do your own research, have a look. It's like I said, that's with gaps in knowledge, things can't go the way we want them to. So like I said, and a lot of people with hypermobility, unfortunately, have to become what you call professional patients because nobody else is doing it for them. You should be able to go in the doctors, and the doctor should go, oh, EDS, I know what that is. I've had hundreds of people in here. This is what we're going to do. Through your door, you're presented with, well, EDS, what's that? And then you have somebody Googling it in front of you, which doesn't potentially fill you with hope. No. So anything that doctor says is pretty much in and out, and you've already lost the therapeutic alliance is gone.
Yeah, it's so true. If more people have more questions, I think I asked the questions that are there. Would you, and I'm going to see if anybody has any questions, would you mind giving a little bit of background? You touched on it a little bit during your presentation about your background, your experience, how you got to working with people with hypermobility, and then how do you, grasp, the research and what other people are doing, what you're doing, people that say, are you trained to work with people with hypermobility? Can you give a little bit about your background, how you started working with people with hypermobility, and then also how you're incorporating, all this other stuff that's going on, which is good. But then when you get questions like, are you trained to work with people with hypermobility? Things like that.
Right, well, in 2009, I was in Afghanistan and I stood in front of a reconnaissance tank called a scimitar when my mate Corey went over an IED, nobody's fault. And I ended up a couple of feet away with my face in the sand. Got up, we had a little bit of contact, we kind of sorted the injured. And then I thought nothing more of it. I just had a little bit of whiplash. I did another 3-4 months of my tour and then I came home. And then a couple of months I was out, my time was served, and within about 6 weeks of being in civvy street, and sitting behind a desk, I started to end up with chronic pain that eventually became chronic. My neck would hurt, tension headaches, but I'd always been able to kind of push through pain, so I kept pushing it, and I'd always been able to push through fatigue, so I kept pushing through fatigue. And then in a bid to just incapacitate me, I ended up with like 12-day migraines, which isn't the greatest thing in the world. Then I embarked off on my journey to try and find out what was wrong with me. So we had the PTSD, that was probably a big cause. I had, well, it's your posture, it's definitely posture. Please keep in mind as well that as part of my ceremonial duties when I was in the army, I did things like troop in the colour. So I've been on Horse Guard parade in full state kit on a horse, sword, in the most awesomely straight posture you could imagine, and that is incredibly painful. I've always had the posture of a potato and it never caused pain, so that kind of never rang true for me what this physiotherapist was saying. I then was told my leg lengths were, I had a discrepancy, and my hip was uneven. You give me an hour, I'll pull you 20 people off the street who have over an inch in difference. It's really prevalent, it doesn't cause pain. I was told my lymphatic system was blocked, and I thought, oh, right, okay, well, tell me about that. How does that happen? Well, it's all because you don't move. And I thought, I'm still running 5 miles a day, I'm moving. So that was another thing, and I ended up with a chiropractor called Ray, who, albeit was a fantastic guy. So we did a few adjustments, that and about 1,500 milligrams of tramadol, which I wasn't supposed to take in that amount, but when you're in pain, you do crazy things. But after about 6 weeks, it just stopped working. The pain relief just stopped. And Ray is literally the only health professional I have ever seen who said, look, Adam, I don't want to take you £40 every 2-3 days, because I was having up to 3-4 chiropractic treatments, which was mega expensive. He says, I don't want to keep taking money if I don't think I can help you to get better. But he is literally the only person I've ever seen who said that. And it's pretty much Ray why I have the integrity I do with my guys, that I want them in, educated, and out so they can get on with life and not have to rely on me. So it's pretty much, he's the reason how I operate, which I think is fantastic. So then I was left with, well, what do I do now? So I did the only thing I could possibly think of. Logically, it makes sense to kind of figure out what pain is and how it works. So I had a read, ended up on the Cartesian model of pain from the 1600s, the same ones that the doctors still use, and the one that we know is wrong. I then had a kind of biomechanics and anatomy, and you end up down the route of fascia and everything else. And over about a year, I ended up pulling myself together. However, this is quite important to note that I got better and I thought, I want to help other people do this, so that's what I'm going to do. It's going to give my life a little bit of purpose. However, I eventually met somebody called Laura who had EDS, and she was pretty much the same as everybody else I've ever seen with EDS. The hypermobile type, some subluxes, things like that. But we just couldn't get rid of her back pain. And I just could not understand why, because I'd done everything I knew, and I'd literally used every resource out of my little toolbox, and I just couldn't figure out. And it's that kind of pushed me through the neuroscience route and push into things like the biopsychosocial model and a deeper understanding of pain. And I realized that people are like pie. people are little slices of physical, little slices of psychological, and then there's a huge social slice that can interfere with everything else. But all of these slices interact with each other. And things like anxiety and stuff like that, people with hypermobility are prone to. I mean, there's lots of correlations there, but there definitely needs more research to be done, but it's pretty prevalent. Things like anxiety are going to affect the physical, which is going to affect your mental health, it's going to affect your social health, and it all plays together. And it wasn't until I kind of made some connections there that I realized, well, hold on, how have I been releasing IT bands with a foam roller if it's a non-contractile tissue with a tensile loading force of about 1,300 pounds? And I thought, oh, well, the simple fact is, I haven't. And I always say, if you want to be right, you have to be wrong. And the thing is, I was posed with a problem. I could continue thinking that things like posture mattered. Because if you go through some of my older stuff, I'm really big on posture. I've hopefully deleted most of it off, but I've left a few up that people have said has been helpful. But the thing is, it's, like I say, it's not about the posture, it's what it does to your brain and how you perceive things ultimately. So I was left with that dilemma. Do I continue on my route? Do I think posture is fantastic and I'm doing myofascial release and I'm doing things to people? Or do I just admit that, yeah, people have been getting better, but it's not for the reasons I thought? And that was probably my opinion, that my singularity to my big bang. That was when things completely changed. And I pushed further away from that model and into my new model and thought, right, well, objectively, this is how the evidence shows it's more than likely working. So this is what we adopt. This is what the evidence shows is probably right. It might change in 10 years. I don't know. Possibly. Research comes out all the time. There was a fantastic one in January this year that showed that actually prolonged slouching rehydrates the discs in your spine. Oh, I can hear posture specialists going crazy, but it's there. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, you still got to be objective about things, and you can't let your own belief. Remember, it's far easier to build a belief than it is to break one down. So
or
if you
another one is the idea that Kegels, you got to do Kegels all day long for, you know, pelvic floor. Come to find out that, you know, we're supposed to actually relax. It's fascinating, but you're right. I mean, there's so many things that we're told to do or we think is right, and then, you know, I mean, people thought, you know, smoking was great years ago, you know, too, and it didn't hurt you. Now, you know, but I just think it's there's so much we don't know, so much research that really needs to do, and we have to take things with, you know, a grain of salt. And then, like you said, there's so much that goes into our presentation that affects us, and it's not always the same as Susie next door or Joe Schmo down in another, you know, state. And what's most important is that we take all these things as we best know it now, according to current research and whatever, but then also handle these other parts and components that could be playing a part, and then learn to help ourselves as best as possible, and then make and establish long-term plans so that we can do what we need to do long-term. And that's where also the patient empowerment and self-empowerment is so key, so that if your job changes, your life changes, you don't have your doctor anymore, that you can still do what you know and go back to ground zero to then help rebuild yourself out of the spiral, or the EDS spiral, as I say, that when you have nothing, when you're stripped of nothing, you still need to be able to help yourself. And that's what's really important, just to your point about everything, is that, you know, changing even our mindset of how we approach things is so key. And the beliefs that we've held for so long is really key. Like the working out, you know, like you said,
yeah.
like
There's so many things out there that we think is true, but aren't. But in reference to when you said about the Kegel exercises, I'm going to let you all into a trade secret, right? Nobody else knows this, so come in close. When you visit London and you see changing the guard and you see the soldiers standing there and you see them on the horses, we're all doing Kegel exercises. Honestly. At the end of the day. So everybody's still moving, and like I say, you think we're just stood there, people get bored, you're stood for 2 hours at a time, completely bored out of your mind. You think, I'm going to do some Kegels, nobody knows, or I'm going to do mental arithmetics or something like that. You know what I mean? So sometimes what we think we see isn't really always the truth. But I just kind of jogged my memory when you mentioned about the Kegels there, Kendra, because yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So along with that, somebody just asked in this a question that actually I was going to ask you too. Similarly, not exactly the same. Courtney asked, what about ACL tears?
But gradual loading is the only thing.
Yeah.
See a good physiotherapist, get a good rehab program, or like I say, a lot of times you can do recovery at home, but it's going to be getting used to loading it kind of gradually. But then if you're hypermobile, sometimes you have problems as well, because sometimes they do synthetic grafts and things like that, or they might use kind of parts of you. And again, everybody's slightly different on how they're going to react to them. But obviously, if you just return it back to things like exercise, you want to be gradually loading. You don't want to be going kind of too far, too fast.
Right. Go slow, as Dr. Chopra says. And that might mean, as I say to my people, you know, as my same community, we all work in the same way, is that sometimes it's just a matter of taking out the idea that we think we should be able to do. And if we can't do that, we don't do anything. You know, I love to work out twice a day, but I can't do that right now. And from a lot of different perspectives. So I have to think about how I move and change it up for a lot of reasons. But sometimes it's, you know, one of the biggest testaments I had is I had a friend of mine say, you know, Kendra, I really realized that when you say just 5 minutes, I understand what you mean. It's not just about just 5 minutes as far as the timing. It's a matter of changing your thinking and what you should be able to do and what you can do at this present moment and focusing on that. And sometimes it's not about going to an exercise class or being able to always go to PT. Sometimes it's just a matter of controlling what you can do at that moment, and whether it's just starting really slow and going low because the exercise class might be too much, where it might hurt to go to PT, or it might, you know, you might have some kind of negative association with something in your body physically and mentally. It's just not there yet. So starting slow and going low, like you said, just low, you know, from a load perspective or whatever kind of perspective that helps you just start somewhere is important. And I say just 5 minutes, but it's more of just a perspective change in what we should be able to do, what we can do, and just assessing what we have available to help us. Really learn to help ourselves.
Weird quirk of evolution, whatever we think is true becomes true.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
you really can't look at people like Roger Bannister. Nobody had ever ran the 4 minute mile. You know what I mean? It was not done. All the scientists at the time said it's impossible. We've hit the pinnacle of physical fitness for humans, and then he did it. And then within 20 years, you had college kids doing it and people who weren't professional athletes do it. Simply being able to follow somebody else's path that they've done it is enough for you to realize, well, actually, I can do this. Which is why I like to put out the success stories of people. Because if even just one person sees Chris going to work full time after she dislocated her arm picking a kettle up, then it's all worth it. You know what I mean? If somebody will go, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
That's right. It's so true. And understanding that even though there's differences between us, and that goes to my point and one of the questions I was going to ask, and there's 3 other questions, so I know we have to monitor time. So I want to make sure that you're okay on time for just a few more questions. Yeah. Okay. Because I know you're later than we are here. So there's different types of Ehlers-danlos syndromes and obviously different conditions that are associated with hypermobility. So based upon that, you know, hypermobility is not necessarily in a vacuum. You know, different components of connective tissue are mutated differently, if you will. We don't know what hypermobile EDS is, but what about that? What about approaching the different types? Do you approach it differently? How do you handle, you know, maybe not knowing exactly what somebody has, or maybe be more concerned about something? What was your approach or thought on that?
Well, yeah, it comes down to the individual you're working with, the person. I mean, out of EDS types, I've had classical, vascular, and hypermobility. The chances of working with anybody else that has kind of any other subtypes pretty low, really. I mean, there's one at the minute that's only got 7 people recognized with it. If somebody's got vascular, then you're going to have to be very careful. You can't go getting Jeffrey out and, you know what I mean, making people flip Jeffrey if it's going to kind of cause some kind of burst or aneurysm or something like that. But the thing is, there's still millions of things people can do. You can improvise, you can adapt, and you can overcome. There's no reason why they can't do gentle loading. So if you're vascular, you can still do gentle loading. Doesn't mean go and kind of, you know, like guns out straight away and, you know, pushing too hard. You can remember we are plastic in essence. The more you do anything, the better you get. So you just start off slow and progress. Like I said, it's not about going all out. It's about consistency, and that's what people really, really struggle with. Because the thing is, without consistency, nothing happens. If you, I don't know, at McDonald's every day. So if you eat McDonald's today, tomorrow when you look in the mirror, you will look exactly the same. If you eat McDonald's the day after, you will look exactly the same in the mirror the day after. And at the end of the week, more than likely, you'll look exactly the same as you do today. However, if you eat it every day for a year, at some point, I can't tell you when, but at some point, you will look in the mirror and you will have gained weight. It's the same as exercise and movement. If you just do it once, if it's not consistent, it's not going to have any effect. It's got to be consistent. Even if it's just 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes, or if you can get half an hour away from the kids, or you can get your frisbee out, or do it in the park. It doesn't need space, really. You can do it pretty much anywhere. But without consistency, it's pointless, because you literally, it's what drives change. You have to be consistent. And if you can't do it, you kind of miss out on the benefits that come with consistency. Sadly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let me ask a couple more questions, because I'm trying to be cognizant of your time and that you probably have to work tomorrow and patience. Okay, so it says, what if somebody is what about severely herniated lumbar sacral disc that's severely stenosing and that's severely stenosing spinal cord? I don't know.
Okay.
Denise, I'm not saying that correctly. Let me know. But so severe herniated lumbar sacral disc that's severely stenosing spinal cord.
That's it. Again, it depends on the individual. We have so many people walking around right now with bulging discs, herniated discs, who have no idea they've got them because it doesn't cause pain. Thing is, the inside of your body is a lot like the outside. We grow older, we get wrinkles. We know that wrinkles don't cause migraines. Thing is, as we get older, our spines degenerate. It's perfectly normal. Like I said, you wouldn't expect not to age on the outside, because we age on the inside. So we get abnormalities on the outside. You might get a cold sore, you might get a spot. We get abnormalities sometimes on the inside. Doing repetitive motion sometimes in the same way might kind of create bulging discs. Most of them go back in by themselves with things like gentle movement and things like surgeries. Rarely, with it starting to get pushed back now, and we're starting to kind of promote movement rather than surgery. But again, it comes down to kind of how bad you think things are, how bad it actually is, because pain's complicated. We don't have any way to measure pain. It's impossible. The best thing we have is the VAS scale, which is the visual analog scale. It's how much pain are you in between 1 and 10. And it differs between people, because pain is a very subjective experience. So the thing is, you could have somebody who has the exact same spine as you and has those problems, but doesn't have any pain, and more than likely doesn't even realize they've got it, if they've got anything wrong with it. Again, we go in and people tell us, well, you've got degenerative disc disease and it's sore, and the alarm bells go in. So when you do any kind of flexion, it triggers off pain responses, and it's unwarranted. If we could just be a little bit more careful with the way that we present information to people, stop using things like slip discs, because it's impossible to slip a disc.
We're talking like bodies are broken and that they can't learn effective ways to manage and adapt. Our bodies are adaptable. And I'm not saying, and I believe you're probably not saying that there aren't, times that we have to do, medical intervention and everything, but I just think, because of course people need to, and that's one of the questions also, but also just changing our perspective and how we handle things is so important. And, people can go have surgery to correct something, but if we're not doing the right things in daily life to help prevent that from happening again, or we have a connective tissue disorder that makes it less likely that it's going to be successful long-term, we still have to deal with the underlying reason that became a problem. So both genetic, epigenetics, environment, whatever it is, it's not always, going to be and I'm making a broader assumption and term, not specifically to anybody or one specific surgery. I'm just making a broader case that unless we're
you're perfectly right. Look at things like craniocervical instability. That is a nightmare to work with. I've had clients come in and we've been able to do a lot, but we've been really restricted because perhaps the vertebra moves and we lose consciousness or something. But the thing is, once people go away and they have that fusion and come back, there's so much more we could do. So sometimes it can be the only route, but it's not necessarily always the route. I've had people who had kind of cranial instability and they've managed it themselves with things like isometric exercise. Neck's starting to stiffen up just thinking about it.
I know, I have it. I'm not going to say nothing against the surgery, but I have 3 children and I did not opt for the surgery. So not yet, but yeah.
Like I said, some people can manage it with like isometric exercises and be completely fine about it. Other people, however, it's not going to work. people are individual. Thing is, you've got to look at your own individual circumstances. Just like, go back to my previous comment, when people come in, you're not treating purely Ehlers-danlos syndrome or hypermobility. You're treating a person. There's so many different factors that influence how they experience life in general, not just pain. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So then somebody asked specifically a surgery question. It says, when you have hypermobile EDS, is it better to do surgery for a complete ACL tear or to exercise to stabilize it to remain active?
Somebody messaged me with that exact same question the other day. Again, it's going to come down to the person. I'd say a lot of things are subjective. What works for you is not necessarily going to work for anybody else, and the only person that can make that decision is you. You kind of got to evaluate where you are in life and what you want to do. Is this going to hinder things? Is it going to make things a problem? Or is it going to be a slight inconvenience, but then it's going to be much better? Like I said, the only person, unfortunately, who can make that choice is you. I mean, I'd love to give you definitely do that, because that's going to work, but I can't, unfortunately. This is a shame.
Yeah, and I don't think that it's hard. I mean, when we think about hypermobility, there's some thought that when you're doing some surgeries and you're attaching different things to something that might be defective, if you will, internally. And I don't like to think about it like that, because I don't see us as defective or broken. But there are, anatomical, biological factors that affect hypermobility from whatever the mutation is and whatever the type is, that sometimes, we might fix one thing, but what does it do, long term, like you said, and unfortunately there is no right answer and one answer for everybody. It's really up to each person with the guidance of the provider. And unfortunately, we just don't have those black and white answers. And it's really, we all have to come to our own decisions based upon, at a given set of time, what we're dealing with, resources that we have, insight from our providers and everything else.
Collagen is everywhere.
Yeah.
That's why problems are so systemic.
Yeah.
What I would like to see changed is if you just get rid of the syndrome of the hypermobility, because a syndrome is a collection of symptoms. We know there's a genetic mutation that causes everything. So technically it should be hypermobility disorder. That would be more fitting. I'm also never really been a fan of hypermobility as a whole, because it confuses people, because it's not about being hypermobile. It's about hyperlaxity. It's about the laxity of the tissue. But again, in a perfect world, I suppose.
Right. And well, then there's different types of collagen, and that is associated with different, mutations to it is associated with different types of EDS. But then you can have hypermobility from, different conditions that aren't necessarily a collagen mutation. So, and it affects different tissues based upon where that is more prevalent in the body, but essentially, connective tissue and mast cells, as I've said on many different things, which are allergy and inflammatory cells, are everywhere and in every type of tissue. So understanding the nuance, I don't think we'll ever understand fully every little link, but understanding as a whole kind of what affects them or not, and then how that might help us based upon our own case or affect us or hurt us, is really up to us to really kind of figure out the best recipe. I think there's 2 more questions. Somebody was saying that she's trying to avoid decompression surgery at all costs through PT. So I know that there's other people like me, are trying as best as possible to manage different pathological issues that might have warranted surgery, according to some people. And I say that because everybody's a little bit different, and not everybody can avoid surgery or not have surgery right away. But there's some people like me that have tried to avoid certain surgeries that might be pathological, found to happen, but through other factors. And I think there's so much research that we need to do on that too. We don't have a whole lot of research on other approaches, which is huge too. We don't know that. So there's not one answer that's right for everybody, and there's not, but we also don't have research on different approaches. So do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is, for things like tethered cord or stuff like that operation could be the best thing you ever do. Mm-hmm. However, another 6 months of physio might be the best thing you ever do, and you totally negate even having to have the operation. But the thing is, nobody can see into the future, and the only way is to pick a route. But I'd always say go for the non-surgical route, and if it doesn't work, then you have the surgical route available to you, and then you at least you've tried both. You haven't just kind of opted straight in and had unnecessary surgery. But if it comes down to it and you potentially need it, it could be the best thing you've ever done.
That's right.
always try everything first.
Right. The path of least resistance, it might be more effort and work on our part, but if it's, you know, less costly or less invasive, you know, we don't know until we really try. Somebody asked about the recording, and okay, so then somebody said osteomyelitis cystitis, if I'm saying that right, aka bone or soft tissue infection. Oh, somebody was saying that she thought she had osteomyelitis cystitis, aka bone or soft tissue infection. It was painful, but not that painful. And exactly, so people were just, somebody was saying that my cervical I heard years ago too, so somebody was just agreeing with what we said. So if there's any last minute questions, I want to make sure that we let Adam go. Where can people get a hold of you, find you, ask you questions? And also, if we're in the US and you're not here and we want to start somewhere, what do we do?
Well, actually, just before this whole webinar, I went ahead and pulled up from the archives if you go onto my YouTube channel, The Fiber Guide, I made a little playlist called Hypermobile Friendly Exercises. And there's a session 1 on stability, session 2 on stability, and there's a session 3 for strength. So if anybody wants to kind of try some different movements that you aren't used to and you might benefit from, then they're there, they're free, they're up there. You just click play, watch. You might need a few bits of kit like resistance bands or a Swiss ball, but most people might have them lying about, or if not, they're quite relatively inexpensive to buy. Like I said, about 50 pence in the UK for a frisbee.
Yeah. I was also I have I have some just, you know, natural movement videos too, where people can start if they like this kind of approach. They're not long, they're just simple things. But you have online help? Do you work with people online?
I do. I made the online education and movement course a while ago, where, like I say, I'm really big on pain neuroscience, and I'm really big on education with people as a whole. So whilst there is a massive physical element to it, and it is essentially online PT, to get access to the next link series of videos, you have to read through a lot of writing and answer the questions which are asked. And once you get them right, you get the next link. So it's kind of helps to test people's knowledge and make sure that what they're reading is going in and they understand things. Because again, like I said, with gaps in knowledge, things don't get done, people misunderstand. So the whole point of the course is to let people understand. But like I said, I put on YouTube, I put three sessions of me basically looking at a camera, taking you through some exercises that you might find beneficial if you're hypermobile. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, just click and watch them.
Okay, and I share those too, so people know where they are with the resources. And I've always said that I would love for you to come to the US at some point. We tried
and I need a holiday. I'm desperate need.
I know. I've been wanting to come to the UK and you know, I work with the Hypermobility Syndromes Association a lot, who I love. They're very much on the same page with what we're talking about too. And but someday, hopefully, you know, we can have you come to the US and maybe teach some workshops and different things. But I totally appreciate everything that you said. I, you know, completely agree. I love going against the grain and really providing information that's a little bit different and out there and getting people to think a little bit differently. Not saying it applies to everybody, but education is key. I also feel that way too. And the more we know and understand as a whole, the better we can learn to help ourselves and be self-empowered to then also not rely on the gurus, if you will, and learn how to deal and manage wherever we are in the roller coaster of life dealing with this, you know, even if we have no resources to help ourselves. So that's the most important thing. So do you have anything last minute to say other than we appreciate you being here and I want to come and retire? I think I'll end on a story. Okay.
It's one of my favorite stories, this. When I was in the army, I was away in a place called Bovington in Dorset, at the bottom of the UK. And I was on a signals course learning how to operate VHF radios. And it was fantastic because we did a little bit of work and then we kind of knocked off and just went to sleep all day. It was fantastic. But whilst we were doing our education course for the radios, every so often a big car would pull up outside with a massive, and I'll tell you, I'm not endorsed or sponsored by Red Bull, although it might say that, but this massive car would rock up outside and it would have a huge Red Bull can on it, and out would pop two ladies, and we called them the Red Bull girls because they'd come in and they'd give us free Red Bull. It was like a promotional thing.
It's like a heart in a can.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I would have taken that. any day. But anyway, the Red Bull girls, they turn up, and it just so happened to coincide with our 10 minute break. So me and my friend Dave went outside, and some people went out to smoke, some people went to sit in the sun. And me and Dave had other ideas. We wanted to go and get a can of Red Bull. So we went in and we opened the big door to the big mess hall, and the Red Bull girls were there with the bags of Red Bull, and the queue was out the door. It was huge. And Dave went, "Oh, Adam, I don't want to, no, come on, let's go." I was like, "Dave, it's Red Bull, free Red Bull." And Dave said, "Yep, look at the queue." I went, "But Dave, Red Bull." And he went, "Adam, queue." And this went on for about 5 minutes. I'm not joking, it was a long conversation. And in the end, Dave didn't want to stand in the queue, so he left. And I stood in that queue and I got my Red Bull. So kind of the moral to that story is sometimes people see the Red Bull, sometimes people see the queue. It's a matter of perspective, and it's transferable to everything in life. Always look at things objectively and you'll see the truth. Yeah,
very true. And also see the ability that we have that maybe we don't realize. Like you said, we're a lot stronger than we think. And
where people think their breaking point is nowhere near where it actually is. People are inherently strong, but they just don't realize.
Right, and that goes to your point of perspective and seeing things differently to realize how strong we really are and where our breaking point really is. And that's so important. So that's why we're here, and that's why you do what you do and I do what I do. And hopefully, you know, even going against the grain a little bit just broadens perspective and gets people thinking a little bit. Even if
it's always good to have your biases challenged.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate so much. People want, I'll make sure that they have the links that you said and they know how to find your website. If people want to ask you questions, they just email you, or is it through the site?
Yeah, it might take me a while to get back to people. I'll try my best to reply to everyone. But I spend a Sunday afternoon going through messages.
Yeah, I don't respond right away either. It's a process I am consistently trying to work on as well. But is your email Adam@the-Fibro-Guy?
Adam.Foster@the-Fibro-Guy.
Adam.Foster@the-Fibro-Guy, and I make sure I'll put that down.
Rolls off the tongue.
All right, so I don't think there's any other questions, but thank you. Hope you get some rest. Thanks for staying up late for us in the US.
Anytime.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I wish everybody who is embarking on a mission to move more all the best health. Well, all the luck in the world, really. Not that you'll need it. Just be confident in what you do.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, but thank you again for everything. And for being initially with my issue with my computer, clearly. I mean, just another issue to deal with.
I would have probably appreciated 20 minutes to get to grips with the...
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry. I just laugh. I'm like, I swear hypermobility affects electronics, and I just have the worst luck. And it's like a brand new machine. I just got back. It's so silly. I'm so sorry. But thank you. You were very patient. So I'm glad we got it working.
Anytime. Right. Well, good night from the UK.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.